Hey everybody, thought I'd come back to continue just sharing about my life based on some of the pictures I've saved. So I created a playlist for this topic. The playlist is called My Life, My Pictures. I started out with the Jody vision and how I grew up experiencing visionary states. So along with that, I started to pretty much tell my life story from when I was a very small kid, and I thought, well, why don't I just get out my photo album and make another series just to share basically what some of my life experiences based on the photo album I have here. And the thing is it really seems like when we talk about when I was growing up and living at home, that seemed to have a lot more photos with it. You know, people were taking more pictures. And I think I had some really good pictures that I might have pulled out of my photo album to share, and then I tucked them away somewhere, like, so they're in like a little like a notebook or something. And I'm thinking one of these days, you know, when I go through all my stuff, I'm gonna find this notebook and there's gonna be these missing pictures, so I'll have to share those. And then I think I have a small stack of pictures from when I came to Montana after getting with Rosie and Gary. Otherwise, I've got these old cell phones I'm not using anymore, and these have pictures. This is from before maybe 2015, because I got this one and started using it in 2015. So I got this right when I went to stay in Denver for a few months. So it's got all kinds of nice pictures. But at any rate, just to kind of go back to my timeline, you know, I moved to Denver in fall of '95, and it just seemed like I would visit my family once a year in the Florida Keys, and so I'd always see my grandma every year, and my dad was living on D Avenue. That's the place where I lived during like middle school and high school. And then I would see him there, and then actually had him come up one year in '97. So somehow or another, we would see each other more like on a yearly average, if not better, right? So, but after 2000, it really seems like things started spreading out and things had changed, where like my grandma moved up to Fort Lauderdale, and I'd only been to that house a couple times. So I went down in 2004, 2014. So that's where I started thinking maybe my visits are becoming 10 years apart. And now that it's 2024, I'm trying to arrange another trip so I'm not more than a decade, so that's my little joke. Is it sure seems like the visits have gotten more sparse, and so like, but also like from the time I think living in Greeley was somewhat consistent. Like we lasted a whole 2 years. Like I lived at the Acacia for a whole 5 years, or maybe 4 years, I don't know, but it was pretty consistent. Like I kept the place for 4 to 5 years. And then really I was there for 4 to 5 years, but then after that it really seemed like everything was more like on rolling rocks. Where like, let me see, after Greeley, I went to stay with Charlie, and then he moved out from under me and left me with that apartment. And I probably should have kept it, but I bailed on him kind of in spite, because I didn't like him letting himself in and power tripping with the apartment. And I went and ended up getting a warehouse space. So I was kind of living part-time at this warehouse space and keeping my things there, and staying other places and doing weird stuff like that to just get by and save money. And then, let's see, then I settled down when I think we ran into some trouble with the police and all that stuff. So that's where I was bringing it up to about 2005. So like, by 2005 I made that trip to Florida. So in 2004, I think I was trying to think if my dad lived in that new house, that he bought his own trailer right down in Key West, because we always lived up the Keys. So I must have went down there for part of the trip. I was at my grandma's and part of the trip at his house. So I don't feel as much of a connection to those places. So a lot of times I dream that I'm going to visit my family's property, and I always visit the place my grandma had on Palmetto Drive, and it's usually the place on, it used to be called Golf Drive until they changed it to Ed Swift Road, because he's the one that paid for our pavement. Otherwise it was just a dirt road full of potholes, right? So that's the funny thing. We actually lived on a dirt road before they paved it, and then I got roller skates. But then we moved over to D Avenue to a seemingly better house, and that's the house. I dream about that house quite a bit too. So those two houses, I tend to dream about those places. But like the new place my dad lives at, I really don't see that in my dreams as much. I had one dream where I felt like I was standing on top of his record cabinet. At first it looked like the canal was empty at my grandma's house. I could see the bottom, and then the water started rising, and next thing I thought I was standing on my dad's record cabinet, and I could see his carpet with water rising. And so I don't know when I had that dream, but I must have been to his house or something. I don't know, but he actually experienced a flood 2 times in a row. Like, he's been really lucky because they live in hurricane country, and we've been through a couple of hurricanes, and I've seen it flood up to, you know, maybe up to our knees, but I've never seen it flood up to inside the house. So it really sucked for him. So in 2005, I had just visited those guys that Christmas, you know, and I remember, you know, going back to the warehouse, and I went through all that drama with Chris, you know, because we got pulled over in Boulder, and we all got busted. Anyways, after that, boy, it was really tense because my friend Scott wanted to get revenge against Chris, and he used the opportunity to drag me into it because they let me out of jail before we could meet the bondsman, and we are going to meet him the next day. So that's when I ended up having to move out of that warehouse space. And then I went back to Denver, so I went to stay with my friend David's mother because she lived right next door to him. And he was somebody that I used to smoke pot with. I used to get my pot from him. And I think, you know, he was also trying to take care of me because he wanted me to take care of him, so to speak, and not, you know, give away any information, because they were probably going to hope that I would report whoever I buy my pot from, you know. But I couldn't stand living with his mother, so I ran into a club friend named Desiree, and I told her what was going on. She's like, Jody, I have this big apartment and I need a roommate. Why don't you come and stay with me? So that's when I grabbed my stuff and went to her house. I'm thinking, you know, early in 2005, that's when I went to stay with Desiree. So I think I have just this one picture from her house. Just this one picture. So she was a clubber, and so I think we were probably gonna go out to club night, you know. So that's my CD collection now. Check that out. This is my CD collection now. Other than the one stacked on a table, my tape collection, my photo collection is here. Okay, and then I still got that same bongo drum and the one I inherited from Rosie. These weapons are out because I probably have used them recently. And I have that same drum, but it's naked because the goddamn moths got in the closet and ate the drum. So this is my typical style. Like, I had a band t-shirt, some like, I love camouflage, you know, and I just love baggy pants, and then boots, and I just had this cool little jacket with a German flag. I figure I'm half German. So my dad's side of the family are the Germans. So at least I identify as, because, you know, even though we're American, you know, because I don't think they, you know, like, Europeans kind of laugh at us because we identify with our heritage to some extent, like we're part German, we're part this. And I think it matters because there's a certain mentality that comes through being German, you know, and there's also a certain mentality that comes through being Irish, which is from my mom's side. So it matters a little bit, and kind of like identifying some of your traits, you know. And I think something that's kind of German, I thought it would be fun, like if they had some kind of a Heritage Day, everybody brings something from the country, the nationality of their family's origin or something. I thought, you know, I should bring some electronic music, like maybe I should make a mixtape of stuff like Kraftwerk and other forms of krautrock and stuff, and see if I can get in trouble with the principal, you know. I never did it, but it was my thought, you know, because I think being German comes along with liking electronic music, you know, not just any electronic music. It has to be a certain flavor, you know. So anyways, so 2005, I've been talking to my friend Rosie a while, so like we lost contact at some point, and then, like, I don't know, 97, 98 might have been around the last time we really talked, and then it took me till 2002 to catch up with her. And so back in Greeley we started talking again, and we went over a lot of things, and it felt like we had a lot in common as far as like But she's like more like a West Coast hippie, you know, she doesn't really know a lot about my music and stuff, but when it comes to like psychic awareness and paranormal, that's where we really hit it off. And so I was able to tell her all about the time travel stuff I was going through and all that, and she totally gets it, and I feel like she's really safe to talk to, like she really understands it. And so we started talking about possibly having me move up to Montana. So I was living in Denver, Colorado, thinking about moving to Montana as early as 2005, and so it did take me till 2009 to make the move. So when she offered it to me, though, she was still taking care of Howard, and Howard's very sensitive and doesn't really want other people in his space, so like I could come up there and live with them under the condition that I live outside in the camper trailer. Now, I thought that sounded like a bad idea for some reason, and since I moved to Montana, I realized it probably was because it was a trailer that actually needed a lot of repair and everything. So truth is, I might have been able to set up to stay in the trailer on a good night, but truth is, if it's freezing outside, I'm probably going to want to come in the house with those guys, and they're going to have to live with it. So it would have been a bad idea, and I knew it, and so I technically had to wait for Howard to die to really be fully invited to come up there and to be able to live in the house. And so it was a two-way street, because I kind of felt like I needed somewhere to go, and Rosie really needed some companionship. So anyways, back in 2005, we were then making a connection, and she sent me this postcard. Around that time, I was living at Desiree's house. I got this postcard, and I think she put a little pinhole like somewhere over here. She just put a pinhole so you could like look through the picture and see approximately where the house is. And so this is looking westbound, so just south of her house is that, like, you see this is called Big Fork Bay. So I would go jump off the dock here, or I could walk through town and jump off the bridge. So you come down here, and there's the bridge actually right over here. Then you swim down the river, jump out right here. Another time I jumped in, I don't do this very much, maybe once or twice. I've come in here and then came out here and just go all the way to Wayfarers Beach. So like, this place is a paradise for about 2 or 3 months to somebody who likes to swim in nice cool lake water. So if I say had everything I needed and I chose to stay in Montana, I would totally go back to Big Fork, and I would probably want to live someplace where it's really easy for me to get back down in that water. So I think I may have even dreamed about that water before moving here, where like we used to go swim in a canal, and so it's kind of like a man-made strip of water, like dug into the like down in the Florida Keys. So it's kind of dug into the land, and I think if you go up the coast of Florida, like everybody has them, so they're kind of like streets made of water. So like they might build them so they go up in between the streets. So like on Big Top, that there'd be streets coming down off the highway, but then there'd be canals coming up between those. And so my grandma lived on one of those, and a lot of times, you know, the edge of the water, it's kind of squared off. It's like there's a dock or some sort of a cement ledge there, and you rarely see the round shape of the land. You know, it's just a lot of times your canals are squared off. And so I felt like, you know, I had a number of dreams where I'm coming down this really nice canal, but it's not squared off so much. It seems more like the slopes of hills coming down to the rooftop, and just, you know, coming down that waterway just feels like a type of deja vu, like I must have dreamt about it more than once. So if anything, I'm excited that I made that connection. So I'm kind of bringing that up because in 2005, that's when we were thinking about it, and that's where it brought me. So I really did move there in 4 years' time. Now 4 is a magic number for Indian people, not from India, but the like Lakota people here of the American plains. And so before I went to Rosie's, I went to stay with the Indians for a couple of weeks and learn a lot from them. And so that was also a 4-year wish, because in 2005, speaking to Rosie, she said, Jody, you really need to learn about the American Indian prophecies. And so I bought a book. It had a bunch in there, and I really loved reading about the Lakota people and the Hopi people. And like with the Lakota people, there was his crazy horse. So, you know, these people deliberately go into visionary state, and so they take advantage of visionary state and dream state to gain useful insight from the spirit world. So it's just another channel of information, or another way to gain insight or learn things. And so I was excited, thinking there are people in the world who really take this seriously, and these are the people I need to find. So, you know, I made a wish back in 2005 that I could find myself a a Lakota medicine man, and I could be invited to Vision Quest. But I didn't know what I was asking for when I was asking for it, but I pretty much got my wish. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about in future videos. So this time I want to talk a little bit about 2005 because, you know, I think that's the first time I've ever really gone to jail. Like, I think I spent like a week or so in jail, so it's like a real wake up and made me, you know, a little more down to earth, you know, like I'm kind of in la la land here and I needed somebody to kind of give me a kick in the ass in a roundabout way. And not that I think I deserve it, but it was more of a important lesson in life. There are so many things that tie in with that, you know, that regardless of what I believe, you really don't want to get caught up in the justice system. You really want to stay out of police, you know, don't want to get involved with police, and you also don't want to, you kind of want to stay away from that doctor too. So I really don't like any other shit. Like, I don't like, you know, like, I respect it for what it is and it should be there for a good reason, but in reality you just try to like stay out of that stuff no matter what you believe or what it is. So if anything, that's what I'm going to take from that is, you know, just, you know, do your very best to, you know, what you call stay under the radar, right? Now, 2005, so living with Desiree came to an end. I just got sick of her bossy ass. Like, we were working at P. Berry Coffee. Now, I had been back at Kung Fu. I must have came back the year before because, you know, I kind of remember, like, refriending Chris Yaden. Like, we kind of had a big falling out over Scott and everything. And then I wrote to Master Tay and tried to refriend him, you know, because we had a big falling out over all that stuff, too, that we went through back in 97, you know, 98. And so it was kind of nice, you know. I felt like, you know, we hugged and everything, you know. Just felt like I was refriending people that I had had a falling out with that year. And coming back to Kung Fu, and then started to get back on the path of training to get my second degree black. So I think in 2004 as the year I was coming down Mount Sanitas and it was too late at night and I really ruined my ankle. I gave myself sort of I injured the bone of my heel and I kind of tore a little bit of the tissue that comes around and connects. And I thought maybe I just sprained it, maybe it'll just go away. And so it really ruined my training and it still affects me to this day. So that's how I know I was back in Shaolin class and really trying to get back on, you know, because I realized if I don't stay in class, I get really out of shape, which I've done. So by not being in class, I put on a lot of extra weight and I've lost a lot of my progress. I did try straight blast gym for a little while and it helped a lot, but then I just wasn't able to hang in there because it's also financially and my lack of being organized, and like I have to make sure I resettle, make sure I have a good income. But most importantly, you really got to learn what you need to eat. So it's kind of a good thing I didn't learn anything about diet, because there's a couple of things I want to do, which is like I want to get tested, because you need to find out what causes you inflammation and things that you're allergic to, because some of those things make you put on weight. And so I really want to change my diet and do all this stuff, and I'm kind of a procrastinator because I've been in limbo. So back to 2005 though, I think, you know, I made that connection with Rosie and started thinking about the Indians. Well, I did have this friend who I met. I used to go to that job where we were like working out like parking lot security, you know, for all these big football events and concerts, and I made friends with this guy named Elias. So he was the one who I reconnect with later. So I've been working that job off and on over the years, and so I've, you know, made a lot of contact with, you know, you kind of make friends with people, but you don't really take them home, but you remember each other. So let me see, from the coffee shop, I think I went, we got laid off from the coffee shop because Starbucks bought it. And I also went from living with Desiree to living, so my friend David, you know, I was living with his mom, and that's who I left. Well, David had this girlfriend who let me stay at this apartment. She was trying to save it for her boyfriend that was in jail, but then she quit paying her rent. It was really scary because then she had the fireman come and knock the door down because I couldn't unlock it for her, and she came and took all her stuff. And I think she was kind enough to leave all my stuff alone, but it was just she took all her stuff out from under it. It was really scary, but then I became the next tenant. And I lived there, so I lived off of like, I don't know if it was like 11th and, I don't know if I was on Clarkson or something like that, but you know, it's like really close to that pizza shop. So I worked at this pizza shop back in what, like 98 or 99. probably 98. And so I must have went back to that place because I was working over there part-time. And I was working at I got the job for central parking. Like we would work at the baseball stadium and, take ticket, sell tickets to parking and do stuff like that. And so I had these two part-time jobs and probably collecting unemployment for quite a bit. And I was just really, getting by. And so 2005 into 2006, I was up in Boulder, Colorado one time, and I met this guy named Will that had on some clothing. It said something about, internal arts training and kung fu, and it had a Miami number on it, a 305 number. I'm like, hey there, it looks like you've been doing some kind of, Shaolin training down in Miami, huh? He goes, yeah, and so we started talking and then, well, sitting down to eat my food. He was working at the Chinese place where we eat there in Boulder, right off of like Broadway. And so I was sitting there eating. He's like, yeah, check out this book. He brought this really fat book out and showed me something to do with Xingyi and all that. It's like, wow, you're really serious. So me and him stayed in touch, and it was really cool because there was never anything sexual. He was just happy to meet someone like me, and he had some really good training, I can tell he was a more advanced student than I was, so I felt like he was my teacher. But this is somebody who also brings me close to the streets. This is somebody who was trying to clean up his life and everything, but he had a problem with cocaine, so where he grew up, he lived what you call a thug life, he lived like a gangster. He's a Puerto Rican boy brought up with Cuban people in Miami, and they were like, street fighting and all this type of stuff, probably drug dealing, been to prison for all kind of things. So he's like probably a multiple felon, but somebody that I trusted enough that I eventually even let him move in with me. But then we had a falling out because, he couldn't keep a job, like he kept binging on cocaine. So it's like I had a lot of respect for my friend Will. But when he was binging on cocaine, I felt like I was paying for everything, and it was like being taken advantage of. And so like we parted ways over that, but by meeting with Will, he introduced me to Roger Brockman, who's he's kind of part of it's called the Willem de Torres family. Now the Willem de Torres family, he's Indonesian. He's like half white, half Indonesian, older dude. He's kind of like the top of the system, and they call him Uncle Bill. And he teaches a combination of Kuntoa and Silat, because what happened when the Chinese came to Indonesia, they ran into people who do Silat, and so they started developing a type of kung fu that helps to answer. So they had to change their kung fu to make it answer to the Silat. So you have Kuntoa, which is just another word for like kun is like your fist, and Tao is like the way. So it's just the way you fight using your hands. It's boxing. It's Chinese boxing for people living in Indonesia who need to be able to answer, because Silat is different. So maybe if you're kung fu on kung fu, you guys, might answer to each other a certain way. Anyways, what happens then is now the Kuntoa also blends, so like it doesn't just adapt and change, but then it also assimilates some of it. So it's partly kung fu and it's partly Silat. So that's what you do. If you pay, like you're trying to fight somebody that has a specific style, you actually have to assimilate to their style just a little bit, enough to be able to answer to it. But if you know other stuff like kung fu or wherever you're from, then that gives you also an upper hand, that maybe the Silat guy doesn't have. So you know some of their stuff and you know some of your stuff. And if they only know their stuff, then boom. So it's a very interesting system. And they also kind of roll in other influences, just like they would have big family meetings, and people would come from all over the country and parts of the world to meet and have like a 2-day festival, and they would have classes on all kinds of martial arts. So they focus on what they train, but then they also explore a lot of other martial arts. So by going to Roger, it's like he introduced me to my first boxing, so I learned like old-fashioned boxing, new fashion, like they teach us here, try to have your hands in front. Old boxing is more bladed, because you're only fighting with your hands. So he actually said, you need to learn the 4 basic boxing punches. They're very important because they're so powerful, and mostly because you don't really find that exact training anyplace else, because martial arts in Asia is so extensive, and yet when you look at Western boxing and how they teach you that type of how to box, how to fight with how to punch without getting punched in the head, it definitely has its own little thing that its own little skill set that you can't get anywhere. And then I made a lot of adaptations, like by doing Kempo, I think I made some adaptations. So I spent a significant amount of time there. And then when I went to Kung Fu, a lot of that is really conditioning training. It's like blending yoga together with boxing. So you do a lot of really good strength and posture conditioning there. And then that has definitely added a lot. I think by learning Tai Chi and being able to work on Tai Chi more has really improved my skill set a lot. And I've seen it in a number of the fights I've had. So like, I think I talked about when I was a cab driver and I got in a fight. It was certainly not a life-threatening situation, but it was something that pushed me to kind of discover myself and how I would react to being pushed to fight. And what comes out of me is very much like Tai Chi. So I end up using Tai Chi on people to fight back, and I feel that I think I'm very easy on somebody because I don't really know them. I don't really know their condition. I know they're acting out of line, but it doesn't give me the right to destroy their body. Because other people go, well, Jody, why didn't you hurt the guy? And I didn't really need to. So I feel like I'm a gentle fighter. And so going on to Kuntoa Silat, it really kind of helped give me great insight and learn how to bring it together and how to see the big picture. Because I think the problem we have in martial arts is we get caught up in identity and lineage and all these things, and we try to think in separate ways, and so we tie a skill set together with an identity or some kind of name, like we're a bunch of like we all do Jodote, and Jodote teaches only this but not this, right? So you can only get the takedown and striking, but you're not getting the grappling and wrestling, or vice versa, like you're only doing the grappling and takedowns, but you're not doing any of the striking and da 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 da. And so that's like what makes one style different from the other. And what we need to really look at is what are the different areas of training that you're doing. Now, there's a bunch of people that have their own different approach to each of these areas, so I guess it's about finding the one that's best for you. And so when it comes to striking, for somebody that wants to combine striking and grappling, you should definitely take Muay Thai, because it already starts to show you crossover. So it shows you good, powerful strikes, but then when you come in and you use the grappling to set up for strikes, that's where if you've been a grappler, it'll really help you then, so stuff like that. So I feel like Kuntoa Silat is really great because it showed me how you come in using strikes to make the entrance. So you might strike through to get the entrance, but if you don't knock them out and you want the takedown, you set them up for the takedown through the strike. So it teaches you how to combine striking and grappling, which is ultimately what I want. And you want them on the floor and you want you on your feet. And it's ultimately what you want. If you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we practice to fight upside down from our back in case we fall down when we're fighting. So that's why we practice. But in reality, you want the same accomplishment. You want to make sure you're on your feet and they're on the ground. So anyways, that was a major turning point for my martial arts life. So I think I went from living with Desiree to living at my own place, and then I absorbed Will, and along with that I got to see some of that Kuntoa training. He took me along further with some Kung Fu training, and he helped me with the 5-element Xingyi. He was really obsessed over the 5-element Xingyi, and I think I've become obsessed over the 5-element Xingyi too, because that's the alchemy of Kung Fu, right? So let me get a sip here. I hadn't seen Frontline Assembly since 1999, and they came to town, and so I went to that show. And it was a pleasant show. I danced in the mosh pit, and I tried some of the new things I was learning from Roger, like how to protect your head, because sometimes in the mosh pit people flap their hands out and they accidentally hit you with swinging elbows. So I was kind of like, just for fun, I was kind of making like what we call a helmet and bat, and just dancing with this helmet and bat, and just... So I like to slam dance a little bit, and I find the right people that slam dance, and it's really cool. And I go to Frontline Assembly and certain bands like that. You can find a group that'll mosh, but they mosh intelligently. If somebody gets knocked down, we help them up instead of walk on them. And it's almost like we're sparring, So I felt like, I was seeing some of the payoff from Roger's training So I definitely got some good training there, and I still apply some of the stuff I learned there. So like, there's when you punch, you come out straight. And Kuntoa, they teach us, it's like a slight hook that, you might be hitting a surface that's not flat, but more at an angle. Like when you're fighting somebody, they're not flat, unless you like make them turn their head, so you might make them turn their head if you want a flat surface, or you're just going for the chin. But if you're coming like to the side here, you want it to come like this more. So we were punching, like coming up like a punch and then kind of hooking a little bit, boom. And so sometimes I do that on accident. So I was working on my boxing and I was like throwing these type of Kuntoa punches, and my boxing teacher's like, no, Jody, like this, it needs to be straight down the line. So some of the things I learned from Kuntoa Silat, seems like the further you go in martial arts, like when you start out, you get really basic, it should be just a straight line, nothing crazy. And the further you go, the more cockeyed it gets. I feel like learning Kuntoa, I'm learning how to punch in more of a cockeyed kind of way, right? So that's a very exciting time taking on some of that training. So I spent about a year with Roger Brockman, but he had a mental condition and he started getting kind of abusive to me because sometimes I'd be running late and he'd be pissed off. But I was also having trouble with Will because he kept kind of getting in my way in a couple of different ways because he'd be binging on cocaine and he was trying to get me to leave my cell phone with him, and I really didn't want to give up my cell phone to him because he was using it to get coke, and I didn't want him to lose it someplace, in like a fight or getting arrested or something like this. So I was fighting with him over my cell phone one day, and it made me late to Roger's, and then Roger was trying to punish me. So he was going to physically punish me like during our training by hitting me extra, and so I kind of thought, he's too scary for me. I can't train with somebody like this, and that I think pretty much finished my training there. And I think about a year or so later, the guy ended up committing suicide. So he had some kind of bipolar condition, and he was living at his parents' house. So I felt like, I can relate to him a little bit if he has post-traumatic stress and all this stuff. But he was starting to get mean to me. Otherwise, he was a very intelligent man, and he really gave me a lot of powerful insight and confirmation on the training I'm doing and what we can be doing. And so I want to talk about that a little bit more, but let me see where we're at in my timelines, because during that phase of my life, so I had Will come and stay with me for a little bit, and then we moved up to a bigger apartment on top. These people moved out, and it was really neat because it was like 2 rooms with a kitchen in the middle, so we'd each have our own bathroom. And so it was a perfect place for me to set up my bed and just have like a cool hangout. And it was just a really neat place, and we had a good price on it, but he was really binging and not paying his end, and we just had to I just abandoned him, so to speak. I abandoned Will. And I went to live with David, actually. So I went to David's, and he had this bedroom in the bottom of his house. So I stayed at David's for a while. And I felt like David ripped me off because I left my bicycle. Actually, I used a U-lock and I put it to the porch, and I think he deliberately stole it because he told me not to leave it out there, it'll get stolen, and I told him I wasn't too worried about it. But what he did was he stole the bike that he sold me and took it to his girlfriend's house, and then he brought an old 10-speed from his backyard and put it out there, and that's how I knew he was the one that did it. And so I knew he did that to me. So when I moved out, I had my friend come and stay the night with me, and he had a van that I could fit everything I owned into my van. So I'm thinking this is like into 2007, that I had my friend stay, and I got all my stuff in the van, and well, he had this big wood box with a lock on it, and I knew that's where his weed was, because he ripped me off for the bicycle, and he was ripping me off in a lot of different ways. I figured I would pay him back, because it's like he's not going to call the cops on me for stealing. I don't normally do stuff like this, so I felt very conscientious, and then he started telling everybody that I stole from him and all this stuff, but I was actually making him pay me back, and I think the amount of pot, there wasn't that much. There was probably like about an ounce or something, like a small amount, it's not like he had pounds in there. He probably had like an ounce or less of pot in there, and it paid me what he owed me. I think I got actually less than what he owed me for what he stole from me and all those different things. But see, people don't hear that side of the story. He'd go tell people, oh, Jody fucked me over, but he was doing me the slow con, and he just thought I was stupid enough to get away with it, and I just wanted to punish him. But anyways, So from 2005, you know, let's see, I went from living at Desiree's, and I think somehow into 2006, that's when I got my own place, and that's when I was working the pizza shop, working the baseball place. And I got Will to come and stay with me, because I remember I took him to some other club night, and it wasn't that great. It was like punk music, and he likes punk music, but he also likes rap music, and used to sing or be part of a rap band. And he actually showed me some interesting rap, you know, because he's more of a tripper. So that's part of how we were friends. So it's kind of weird. I made friends with this guy. He's like a Puerto Rican, you know, person with a gangster background and listens to rap. But we were friends because he was pretty open-minded and intelligent, and we did get along well enough. But I just couldn't deal with him binging on coke, and it was like costing me money, and it was really stressful. And I kind of feel bad, like I wasn't a good enough friend to him. But I don't know if I care enough about somebody, I'd probably go through a lot of shit like that with them. But maybe I just didn't care about him personally enough to go through that. So that's where I think I came out of that place to David's. And I always trusted David. He's also he's like a white guy. He's kind of got dark hair, kind of this slender Germanish, probably a Germanic person, you know. Actually, reminds me a little bit of the singer from KMFDM. I think I went to see KMFDM, and I realized, you know, David looks a lot like that singer. And I always thought David was kind of cute. You know, he's like this tall, slender guy, and he'd have, like, you know, sometimes he'd dye his hair light and have the dark roots, and I just think that looks cute. But I felt like I wasn't really attracted enough, or maybe I could have been his girlfriend if I was interested. But by staying with David, I met my friend Kim, and she was like somebody who was transsexual, so she was going as a guy, but she didn't have her, you know, she had her female parts, but she was taking the hormones, so you know, she could grow a little beard and be a guy. And so me and Kim made friends over, like, we could talk about ufology and stuff like that. Like, she was psychic, and so Kim went back to being female, so I'm gonna say she. But like, living with David, I made a super important connection with Kim. But I had to bail on David because he started doing meth and acting bad, you know. Like, I didn't think he was like that. I thought David was too intelligent, and like he would only stick to pot, you know, and I thought I could trust him, but then he was starting to screw me around. So that's where from like 2005, I went from that warehouse to Desiree's to my own place. Me and Will got a place. Then I went to David's. Then I went to Janet's. So basically I ended up at Janet's, I think, by 2007. And then since I was working with the parking place, Central Parking, I got, you know, given a better offer, so I was able to work full time more. And me and Janet were working at the same parking garage. So that's how I ended up with Janet. And so I want to come back and talk about, so I think I just kind of just blasted through like about 2 years of my life right there, where I really only had about one picture and a postcard to state, you know, this is when I started thinking about going to live with Rosie. But over the next couple of years, I'd been coming to Kung Fu class and trying to work to my second black, and at the same time, I had discovered the Kuntoa Silat family. It was super important and valuable part of my life, but at the same time, always moving from one place to the next. It was really hard to feel stable. Like when I went to Janet's, I was probably there for at least a year or so before. It must have been about 1 or 2 years, I'm thinking, before it fell apart. So it was somewhat stable for a while, and I felt safe with Janet to a certain extent. But when I come back, I need to talk about from 2007, maybe. Depends on how much information I have this year, but 2000 to, it just seems like when I talk about before 2000, I had a lot longer stories, but this seems like everything's just whizzing by so fast, and I've just really been trying to, you know, just survive, you know. Like, I feel like, you know, the only thing I was really doing for myself was going to Shaolin Kung Fu and doing some Kuntoa Silat a little bit, but the rest of it just seems like, you know, just barely getting my rent paid, never being able to save money, you know, always stuck riding the bus because I couldn't afford to buy a vehicle. So all these years, you know, from 1995 moving to Denver to like 2009, you know, I've just never really been able to get ahead of just being broke. You know, they say just above broke, you know, just always trying to work a job, always trying to make ends meet, and just not really getting anywhere. And that's where, you know, I was really getting burned out. So when I come back, I'll talk about maybe I'll be able to fit it in, you know, from moving to Janet's to moving to Rosie's, you know, because that's like a whole it's a very special block in my life, is those last couple of years of living in Denver. So anyways, you guys, I don't know, it's like, I guess the story might say, it's just the continuances of my last one when I was saying I feel like my life I've been living on rolling rocks, but at the same time I might be on rolling rocks. But I was getting some really valuable martial arts training, so I've been able to keep my balance while I've been on those rolling rocks, where I'd like to think maybe, you know, not as many people can deal with the things I do, and maybe things could be worse on one hand, things could be better. But I really think that my life is particularly challenging and lonely a lot of times, and that's where if I come out with any strength and any sanity, then I'm definitely, you know, I have a better state of wellness or mental wellness than you would expect. Like, you know, so a lot of stuff I've described in my life, you know, especially when I go into the Jody Vision, I really talk about a lot of the weird stuff I've experienced. I think I've had a pretty easy life on some respect, like, you know, like I haven't had a bad accident and things like that. Like, I've always been able to, you know, I haven't become homeless really. I've always had a roof over my head. I've always got something to eat, you know, and I usually got something to smoke, right? I've always got music, you know. I'm never, you know, I'm kind of living a good life. But I think if my life is challenging by any chance, then it's really because it's mentally and emotionally challenging, because there's just certain things that get put before me. There's certain things you care about, and so some people learn to be callous to deal with that. Like, some people would rather just be deadened and shut off their feelings, so that way they don't get their feelings hurt by having them. But I think I've gone through life, you know, kind of developing a bigger heart, and doing that, you can be a more sensitive person, and you can get your feelings hurt if you care about stuff and you care about people. That stuff can hurt your feelings, and, you know, losing things and stuff like that can really hurt your feelings. And so I feel like I've had to take a lot of losses and stuff like that, and just seems like, you know, I've spent a lot of time practically not able to just settle down and make myself at home. So maybe that's a good thing, because then I'm not too so I guess the good thing is it makes me more adaptable. So I might be more adaptable than I would be otherwise if my life was too easy. So it's kind of like, because I chose the life of a martial artist, you know, maybe it's in my power to have a challenging life. It keeps me on my toes, you know, so that could be the positive in it. But if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, you know, what an American person should expect, it really looks like it sucks balls, because, you know, I should have a career, I should have a house, I should have a husband, and I should have kids and all this stuff, and I just don't have none of that stuff. I'm just kind of a loner, and I really don't have much, you know. Like, everything you see on this table is probably like the most valuable thing I have in the world is my music, you know, and my pictures. Maybe my car, but even then, like, I would rather lose my car than this stuff. Now, cross my fingers, I hope nobody takes my shit. You guys, I'm going to share a little bit more about my life on my next one. But I want to do a couple videos, maybe talking about some of the, what you call, the mystic stuff, because training with Roger Brockman, he really kind of supported me in my mystic path and my mystic training. So you guys, I'll talk to you soon. Take care for now.